My name's Matt Parker. I'm staff writer for Total Guitar by day. I'm not like a superhero by night. I'm not sure where I was going with that. Yeah, and basically my job consists of, I sort out all of our new band selections. I go to a lot of gigs. I sort out album reviews. So I'm sort of quite involved in the music scene locally, and I kind of, yeah, go and see a lot of music basically. And also I've sort of been in bands for about 10 years on and off, and I've sort of played the toilet venues, and for want of a better word. And I sort of know how it is really when you're trying to get your first gigs and sort of try and get things off the ground. And promotion's a big part of that really. So really this talks about what you can do and maybe just some of the things that you might not have thought about, and probably going over the things that you have thought about, but making sure you've not forgotten important aspects of that. First off really, before you promote your gig, you need to know the information basically about the gig, and then you need to get it out there. That's basically what you're trying to do. So the most important thing first is to collect all that information together, everything that you think you're going to need people to know. It seems obvious, but get it together on one sheet first, because you're going to keep coming back to that, or you're going to keep, otherwise you're going to write it 5 or 6 times down the line. So there's lots of ways you can promote your gig and promote your band. Most traditional are your like posters and things like this. It's from the Revival tour. It's one I got sent recently. Obviously, not everyone can afford big glossy posters, professional artists, and getting them professionally done. But you can really pull off a lot of this sort of DIY if you think about it, and if you think about clever ways to do it yourself. You can do a lot of this sort of thing with stenciling. This one, which I particularly enjoy, came free with an issue of Metal Hammer recently. And it's for the band Ghost, who are kind of like semi-religious horrorcore type vibe going on. I think if you wear this about town, it gets you noticed, and it gets your band noticed as well. So consider the sort of bishop hat angle when you're promoting your band. I can pass this around if anyone fancies wearing it. It gives you an immense sense of authority, I have to say. So most of these posters, the Death Cab one and the Killdozer one, were taken from this sort of book of poster art. So they were going to be particularly arty ones. But one of the things that you can notice from that is that even people of that level don't necessarily put all the useful information on. They can sort of lose that quite easily. You can also, yeah, it's important, I think, to sort of get price and things like that on. And it's less important if you're a big band, I think, because you're going to sort of know what the deal is when you're going to go see a gig of a certain size, especially if it's a more established band. But really what the idea of the poster is and the flyer is really is just to get the essentials on there. And when you gather all that information together, like I was saying at the start, you're going to sort of you're only going to be able to get some of it on some things. So it depends on the channel you're using as to how much information you can convey. So posters and flyers, we're thinking the essentials. You really need to sort of think the where, why, how, dates and times. Sorry if this is obvious, but just so you know. Dates and times, location, entry cost, who's appearing, if there's any like age limitations, because sometimes that can happen. You'll get, if it's like a sort of a drinking show or whatever, and you're not allowed under a certain age limit in there. And you also need to think about who's your target audience, and therefore, how does your artwork appeal to those people, basically. In the other channels, the sort of information you're going to want when you're like online, when you're promoting through like Facebook or a blog, you can have a lot more space, so you can fit on things like, you could maybe put on flyers that they could download that get them, sometimes you get money off with flyers. A lot of the gigs I used to play, so I did that. You can put on things like a map, which I think is really essential. And you can put on sort of descriptions of the bands that are playing, any press quotes they have, and basically make it as easy for the customer as possible, or the punter, whatever you want to call them. People are very lazy, basically, and they get quite scared quite easily. They don't want to go do anything different a lot of the time. So you kind of have to lay it all out there for them so they can sort of appraise what they're going in for. Okay, so once you've got all your information together, the next thing you've got to do is really get it out there. And that's sort of the harder part of the task, really. So there's a number of ways you can do that. Like I was saying, flyers, posters, websites, if you're going through press, though that can be difficult when you're starting out. And sort of social networks is another really big one, particularly Facebook, I think is quite effective for getting people to gigs. But when you've got all those, it's easy, especially when you've got things like Facebook and blogs and all that crap, it's easy to get sort of sidetracked from actually just getting out there and just promoting your gig sort of physically, basically with flyers and things like that. And it's really important to do that still because, believe it or not, the internet is a lot bigger than Bath, and people don't have to care, basically, on the internet. There's so many people out there that they're not going to just stumble across your event, whereas if your event is in Bath and you've got posters up all over Bath, people are going to stumble across your event, and they're going to walk past it and things like that. So it's about getting them in. Another reason is, different groups of people hang out in different places. Not everyone uses the internet. It depends what your gig's aimed at, what kind of audience you're going for, and who you want to come. So you need to maybe get a group of people that aren't Facebook savvy, then maybe think about doing more physical promotion that way. The main reason, though, I think, is that face-to-face interaction and sort of that engagement is just by far the most effective way to get people involved with your band. And if you're in a band or if you care about music, which is, I assume, why you're here, that's the most important thing. It's about getting other people to care, basically. And the best way to do that is face-to-face, I think. And you need to convey that. So that's why it's important to basically go through the whole flyering process, I think. They can delete an email, they can ignore friend requests or Facebook notifications till the cows come home, but if you're standing in front of them, it's a lot harder. They can still try and ignore you. I mean, we all walk past, charity muggers and things like that, but yeah, it's harder.